Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're watching from. Welcome back to another video. And as promised in the last video, in this video, we're going to be covering deportation proceedings in the event that you have been arrested and you have been put in removal proceedings. So, like I said, when you're arrested or when you're about to get deported, it doesn't happen right away. They don't just pick you up and send you right to the airport. There is a process that they need to go through in order to get you out of the country. Now, there are special occasions or circumstances in which you can be removed before your hearing, which is called an expedited removal. But that is very rare. It happens only if you've been in the country for less than 2 weeks and you are arrested within 100 miles of the US border, which isn't that deep into the US. It's a very short distance when you compare to the massive amount of land that is in the US. So there are two ways in which you can start in the deportation proceedings. One is through being arrested, and the other one is through a notice to appear. Now, when you give a notice to appear, it's usually sent in the mail or is hand delivered to you at your house, at your address, by an immigration official. So the notice will give you a specific date in which to appear in a certain court where your hearing will be held. Now, if you are arrested, there are three ways in which you can be arrested. It can be through the local police, if you have committed a crime, and they can hold you on behalf of ICE for up to 48 hours. If the ICE don't pick you up after 48 hours, they should be able to release you back into the public. You can also be arrested by the Customs and Border Patrol at the airport or at the border and handed over to ICE. And the third one is the most common one, which is the ICE arrests by themselves, where they come to your house or place of work and they pick you up. Now, when you've been arrested, you are going to be detained by the ICE or agents as they assess your security risk and whether to take you for a bond hearing. Now, you will either be held in a detention center or in a normal prison that has been contracted by the ICE agents to hold illegal immigrants and documented immigrants on their behalf. Now, at this point, you're usually given some options. You can either apply for voluntary departure. Now, there has been a bit of controversy with this issue because a lot of people have claimed, there have been claims that the ICE officials coerce people to take the voluntary deportation process because it's much cheaper for the government, because they don't have to spend the amount on prisons and upkeep for the prisoners, and they also don't have to charter a jet in order to take you home. In short, you just do everything by yourself and leave. So there have been claims that the USCIS, rather the ICE agents, coerce people to take this option. Now, there is some criteria that you need to have met in order to qualify for this. You need to have a valid travel document, for example, a passport. You need to have enough money to live on your own expense. You need to be able to post bond, and you need to have a display of moral character in the time that you've been staying in the US. If you've been arrested for criminal activity, you're not going to get the voluntary departure. Now, if you're granted this, you'll be given a specific date to leave the country, and it's usually about 2 to 4 months from when you've applied for it. Now, if you don't qualify for the voluntary departure, you will remain being detained, then the next thing will be a bond hearing. You'll be taken in front of a judge, and the judge will determine the amount of bond you're supposed to post based on your community ties, the time that you've been in the US, your criminal record, and other such factors that influence bond and bail hearings. Now, if you pay this money, you're going to be released. In some cases, the judge will refuse to grant your bond and you'll have to remain in detention. Now, this process isn't short. Typical bond hearings for immigration cases are usually very long, and there have been claims also that it's been set like this so as to discourage people from applying for it. You've had people who've stayed in prison for up to 2 years awaiting the bond hearing. Others are lucky they get an earlier bond hearing, and they pay it. They're able to go back out to the community. Others are given a bond hearing, but the amount is set so high that they cannot pay it, that remain in detention. So it's a process. There have been claims that the way the process has been made, it's supposed to frustrate you into choosing voluntary departure in order to save the government money and to expedite the number of cases which are going in front of judges. Now, there's also people who are released based on their own recognizance, who they are in the community. Maybe if you own a business or you are a local leader for your community, you can be released based on that, and that will be enough to keep you out of detention. Now, you have a right to have your own attorney at this point, but of course the government is not going to pay for it because this is a civil proceeding, it's not a criminal proceeding, and so you have to pay for it, for your own lawyer. And like I said, if you're not granted the bond, you're going to remain in prison. Now, after the bond hearing, you have something called the master calendar hearing. Now, in this section, that is where the USCIS, the ICE agent, the ICE attorney rather, is going to appear in front of a judge and is going to list the charges that they are holding you for. You can either admit or deny them, depending on what you decide or what your lawyer decides. And you can also introduce your defense for you to stay in the US. Now, these defenses are quite a number of them, but the most common ones are usually filing for asylum, marriage to a US citizen, and cancellation of the deportation proceedings based on long-standing history in the US. Now, once you've passed this process, now you've introduced whichever defense you're going with, the next step will be your merits hearing. Now, this is where, after you've already said what you're going to go with, now you go and present it in front of a judge. Now, the judge will decide what to go with, whether to have you deported or whether to admit your defense for staying in the US. So like I said, there are the three common ones: the long-standing history in the US, marriage to a US citizen, and asylum. A lot of people go with asylum and marriage to US citizen, and a lot of it tends to work on most times. So this stage, the merits hearing, can usually take a few hours or can take several days. And if you're granted the defense, whether you've been admitted, like you say you're married to a US citizen that you cannot leave, then the judge says fine, you can stay, then pretty much you can proceed on with your application into getting a green card. Now, in the event that the judge denies your defense, then you will be handed an order of removal. When you're given an order of removal after your denial, you have up to 30 days to appeal. Please note that even if you win, ICE can also appeal that decision. So just because the judge has decided that you can stay, does not mean that it's at the end of the case. Remember, ICE can still appeal within 30 days. If you don't appeal, then you're good. You can proceed with your application. Now, appeals can take months before they are heard. Now, if you have a valid bond posted, then you can go back home. If you were denied bond or you not post bond, it means you have to go back into detention for all those months until your appeal hearing is held. So you see how the process is geared towards making you take the way out by yourself, the voluntary departure. Now, in the event that all this fail, at that point, when you receive the order of removal, is when you'll get deported. Now, typically in countries which are close by, like Mexico and other South American countries and Central American countries, ICE usually sends buses and planes almost on a daily basis. But people who come from far, they have to charter planes to fly the people across. Like people coming from home, they will typically have a chartered flight where it's filled, or they will book a seat in a commercial flight for you. So in order to avoid all these things, that's why they tend to make people, especially people without a criminal record, choose the voluntary departure. And that is how deportation proceedings go. So when someone tells you you're going to be deported because of something, they don't just pick you up and put you in a plane. It's a process that takes such a long time. It takes months before it comes to actualization. So if you're able to, if you're in deportation proceedings, if you're able to, I would recommend getting a lawyer who will be able to find the best ways, who will be able to represent you in the best ways, who will be able to help you get a bond to be able to be released and be out of detention, because those little things are what's going to help you get through. So I'm going to stop this video here. This will be the end of the Know Your Laws series of videos. If there are any questions, you can just leave them in the comments, and maybe in a letter I can reply them to, and under the same section, or I can make a later video with questions concerning this. That is it. Have a good night, have a good day wherever you are, and take care of yourself. Goodbye.